It never fails to amaze me how ticklish you are. It's unbelievable.
I know, it's getting worse.
I'm amazed you can still finish mowing the lawn.
Thanks. Hey, Dave.
Yeah.
Real quick. Do you know when a shirt becomes your go-to shirt?
Oh, John, one of the greatest moments in life.
Right?
Like a magical transformation anointed by the heavens. Mm-hmm. Did you get that shirt from Quince?
How could you tell that?
John, don't play this silly game with me. It's lightweight, it looks comfortable, and high quality. And I know that you don't like to spend too much on clothing, so has to be Quince.
Yep.
Quince has all the things you actually want to wear, like organic cotton silk polos, European linen bead shorts, and your favorite comfy pants that work for every situation.
And I'm surprised you didn't mention this. Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes.
Wow.
Right? At 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
I wonder how they make money, John.
I know it.
But
they're not in it for the money.
I still enjoy it, though. I have hoodies, polos, slacks, all from Quince, and they're a perfect fit for way less than I would pay for clothes at high-end stores.
Exactly. Guys, elevate your closet with Quince. Go to quince.com/dadville for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns.
What?
It's ridiculous.
Jeez Louise, that's QUINCE.com/dadville to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's almost every day of the year, John. Quince.com/dadville. Dadville. Yeah. Hi, I'm Dave Barnes.
And I'm John McLaughlin.
And welcome to Dadville.
Dadville is a podcast where we talk about life, love, and the pursuit of awesome dadding.
It's funny thoughts and deep talks.
So please, enjoy your time here in Dadville and enjoy this episode with Dr. Lisa Damour.
Listen, we are thrilled that you're on.
Yeah.
I'm really honored that you invited me.
Yeah, we're really thrilled. And so the way that we start with what we call the brag sheet. And this is just a little bit of like, look what you've done out there. Just look what you've done. Look at her. It's basically
Can I come hang out with you guys all the time?
Please.
Like, honestly.
We will, sadly, we'll put you to work clinically. So we will ask you questions until you can't see straight. So you need to buckle up for that as a part of it. But we can do it. We will absolutely do it. So here, so Dr. Lisa Damour. Is that right? Am I saying right?
Yeah,
I was so nervous. It's like my least favorite part when I have a cultural name, a European name. I'm always like, I'm going to botch this. So graduated with honors from Yale University. We've never said that. We've had 200 plus episodes on this podcast. We've never said that phrase.
We've had some people who like squeaked by at Yale, but no one with honors.
And worked for the Yale Child Study Center before earning her doctorate in clinical psychology at the University of Michigan. She has a podcast called the Ask Lisa podcast, written 3 New York Times bestsellers. That's Untangled, Under Pressure, The Emotional Lives of Teenagers. And we always do a quick take. John, how many books do we have between us?
I was actually crunching those numbers right before she popped on. It's 3. She has 3 more than us.
Okay, so we just like to keep it up to date. Authored the monthly Adolescence column for the New York Times, regular contributor to CBS News, created Untangling 10 to 20. This is really great. I love you doing this, by the way. A digital library of premium content to support teens and those who care from them. And I added this, but may be scared of them. I just added that. Serves as a senior advisor to the Schubert Center for Child Studies at Case Western Reserve University. Maintains a clinical practice. There's so much stuff. Fellow at Yale's Edward Ziegler Center in Child Development and Social Policy and the University of Michigan's Power Foundation. Power Foundation. That sounds like
that was the family name, but it's a good name.
That sounds like a secret superhero thing.
I know it does, right?
It's like the Avengers, and then the Power Foundation is like right under the Avengers. Serves as an expert advisor to Sound It Out Together, and finally, she's an English voice of UNICEF's podcast to support Ukrainian teens. Also, and this is maybe the coolest fun fact, served as a consultant to Pixar for Inside Out 2 and also has $2. I mean, that is, look at that. Just look at you go. Look at you go.
I will say the Pixar thing was every bit as fun as you would imagine it was.
So we're going to get into just we're going to get in the weeds. So buckle up. I hope you got your boots on. We have to talk about that just out of a sheer curiosity. Like, what does that look like? What do you do? Is it, what is that? Just what does that whole thing entail?
So here's what happened. So it was May of 2020, and I got a call from Pixar, and they're like, "Hey, we're working on this film. We want to talk to you."
Does the phone say Pixar?
No, it was through 14 agents.
Sure.
Wouldn't that be cool?
That'd be amazing.
Wouldn't that be cool? Edna from The Incredibles is
Edna.
calling you now. That would be the
Or
call
they just
I
have
want.
the voice actor call you.
That'd be so cool. And so I got on a Zoom with Kelsey Mann, the director of Inside Out 2, and Meg Lafave, one of the main writers. And they were holding my work. They were holding Untangled. They were holding Under Pressure.
Wow.
And they were deep into it. And they were like, so here's what we're working on. We're working on a movie about a teenage girl who's got a lot of anxiety. So like right down the middle of what I do. And we just started talking about what they were making and the plot and how it was coming together. And then we just stayed in conversation for 4 years. So
Holy cow.
I would go back and forth to Pixar sometimes to meet with the team. I would see drafts of the film, which was really quite remarkable.
Cool.
Wow.
And do a readout. And there's another psychologist, a brilliant, wonderful guy named Dacher Keltner, who had consulted on the first film, and he and I worked together on this one. And so we would do readouts. I one time did a presentation to every single person working on that film about adolescent development. I just did a straight up hour on like, here's teenage development, here's what you need to know. My husband and I got to go to the Hollywood premiere. I am sure this is my first and last Hollywood premiere.
Amazing.
It was so much
The
fun.
movie, both of those movies are
just amazing.
incredible. They're so good.
It's also remarkable how much it's changed from like, Bambi.
Oh,
Where they're like,
Yeah.
let's
We've
just
come a
make it
long
about
way.
a deer, and then a mom loses a mom.
They
And
had
they're
a-
like,
like a hunting
we're reading
consultant
books. We're
on
bringing
that.
hunting consult.
That's amazing. Well,
That is remarkable.
look,
What a dream.
like the Pixar executives, my wife and I, we have discovered your work recently. We had heard of Untangled. We have 2 daughters. So we had heard of some of your books for a while, and then recently we read Untangled. And I have to tell you, I don't know that a book has like had such real-time application to our lives. Like we would read something that day and then be in a situation that night where we would like, I'm handling this differently than I would just naturally handle this based on what I read today. And like, we needed some wins. And your book came along, and I also have to give a shout out to Amanda Young at Raising Boys and Girls, and David Thomas and Cissy Goff, who are friends of the pod, and they have helped us tremendously as well. But we do a weekly email, and Dave and I put this in a couple weeks ago in my weekly email. I was like, hey, check out this book, guys. Everyone needs to read this book. And Amanda read that, emailed us, and was like, hey, well, I can connect you guys if you would like. Because I put in there, I was like, Lisa, if you're reading this, we would like to have you on the pod.
Because we
immediately."
assumed you were.
And
getting that email.
I just can't, it's so cool that now we're talking to you. We're so excited. I already have, speaking of anxiety, I have anxiety right now just looking at our notes, because I'm like, we're not going to get to half the stuff that we have. But, so thank you so much
You're welcome.
for coming on the pod.
And that gives me goosebumps, what you said about the work and its application in the immediate. And I will tell you, given that your podcast is named Dadville, I will tell you something I have learned along the way, because that book's been out for a while. I think the people it helps the most are dads. And
Wow.
and the reason for that is I think that moms who are raising a daughter have like some working memory of, oh yeah, I did this. Like this doesn't feel
Yeah.
so foreign.
Right.
My experience of the dads I interact with is that they have a baby daughter and they are like, all right, kiddo, you and me, we are going to be best buds.
Yeah.
Like we are going to be so close. I am going to give you everything I've got. I love you with every cell in my body. And that is going to be our relationship. Like we're just going to have this wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And for 10 years, it works.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? The kid is like, this is great.
And you
This is
do.
absolutely
And
great.
you do. Yeah.
And then one night, right around 10 or 11, she goes to sleep and she wakes up the next morning and the deal has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And the deal is you are annoying. You don't know much. You seem to ask way too many questions.
Are we talking about wives or daughters? I lost the. It's very.
It has several applications, what she's saying.
Okay. Just
And so I think a lot of dads are like heartbroken in that
yes.
moment.
Wow.
Like everything I had laid down by groundwork has suddenly blown up and we are going into the years that scare me the most.
Yep.
And the relationship that I put all of this work into has suddenly shifted in a very unpleasant way. Oh no.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually think I see more dads recommending my book to other dads as a way to actually reconnect with their kid.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and it happens exactly how you described it, and it happens way earlier than you thought that it would happen.
10
Yeah.
10 or 11.
Yeah. So, okay, so let's start off, if we can, with what's happening developmentally, because to me, that's maybe one of the most, the common theme that is so helpful for me with your book is like just knowing what's happening developmentally in their brains and all that kind of stuff, specifically to right now, like emotional sensitivity, because obviously sort of the caricature of the teen girl is just the wildly emotional, erratic, irrational, human being. But can you talk a little bit about what's happening developmentally that causes that?
Absolutely. And, it's funny. I felt like other titles I could give to Untangled, like What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager, or It's Not About You, right? This isn't personal, right? I mean, there's so much that book tries to capture. So here's the deal. And this is an interesting sort of, I wouldn't go so far as to say a design flaw, but it's an interesting thing to mention in the nature of human design. So as kids move into puberty, and this is true for boys too, though it's a little later because boys hit puberty later, their brains remodel. And they're in puberty before they look outwardly like they're in puberty. The neurological stuff begins first. And the remodeling of the brain is that the brain actually becomes faster and more powerful and more efficient. It just gets smarter in a whole bunch of ways. Now, the design question mark we have here is that it remodels from the back to the front. So from above the neck to behind the forehead. And all of the emotion centers are run from the back. And the ability to maintain perspective about anything is up in the front. So what happens is that adolescents go through a juncture that we would call sort of a gawky brain time, where their emotionality has been upgraded. Their capacity to feel things is really, really powerful. And their ability to stand back and get any perspective on their emotions is lagging. It has not yet gotten the upgrade. So they go through this phase, and it's, kind of at its absolute height around 13 and 14 in girls if we look across the population, where they are suddenly having meltdowns around things that they did not used to have meltdowns around. And it's alarming to the family because they're like, why is she in a fetal position on the kitchen floor about she can't find her pants, right? The jeans that she wanted to wear. Because 2 years ago, this kid would have been fine.
Yeah.
It is also alarming to the kid. And I think we lose sight of that sometimes.
Wow.
That there's a part of them that's like, what is wrong with me?
Right.
And it's scary to them. And then that's before we were in a soup of headlines about adolescent mental health crisis and everything that can go wrong with teenagers. So this is just hard. Normal development is hard.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And I think at one point, that reminds me of some point in the book where you were talking about, like your teen needs to see that you can handle their emotion. Because, you hear there are all kinds of different schools of thought. Like some people say, which maybe I feel like I remember hearing this more when they were toddlers or something like that, when they're throwing a tantrum, match their emotion. And sometimes it shakes them out of it or whatever. There's all kinds of different approaches. But at some point in your book, you were talking about like they are throwing these emotions out that they're uncomfortable with. And then sometimes they're trying to, I forget what the term was. I'm jumping ahead of my notes.
I think it may be like hot potato or externalization.
Yeah. Which is such a crazy...
I know.
I mean, can you explain kind of what that is? Because that is such a weird kind of like subconscious judo move that they don't even know that they're making.
No. So in psychology, we think about psychological defenses. And defenses, which sound like they're bad, they're actually not usually bad. They're just filtration systems. It's how we get through the day, right? And so, common defenses are things like compartmentalization, like I'm not going to think about a defense. Like, you got some news that you can't quite handle at that moment and you're just like, I'll deal with that later, right? That's healthy. There's rationalization, like, actually, it's a great thing that happened that wasn't what desired because we can have this other thing happen, right? I mean, we do this all the time. This is what it means to be human. So there's one defense that we tend to see most in adolescence, and it's called externalization, which is the I don't want to feel this anymore, you feel it on my behalf. And it is complex and it is subtle. And the form it takes is a kid, let's say, a girl who's a very serious student, gets a test back that is not good. Like she's really bummed out about the result. And so she's like, she's upset all day and she's tired from it. And she gets home and just casually leaves like this, D test on the kitchen table and goes up to her room. Her folks come home and they're like, whoa, what is this? And she's like, oh my gosh, you guys are totally overreacting. Mm-hmm. And they get upset on her behalf. They have the feeling she was having. And it's like just a way to be like, I can't take this anymore, but this isn't done. So will you guys carry the weight of this for a while? And I'll be over here saying that you're being annoying, right? And it's just a gift we give our kids sometimes to carry something that they don't want, that's not ready to be put down, but they don't want to carry.
Yeah.
You cannot prevent it. You cannot avoid it. So I think our job is to try to take things in stride. And a simpler version of this, just about our ability to try to be a steady presence for our kids. And John, you're talking about like earlier in development and what's the guidance? Like there is a place early in development where we really are good at understanding that our kids are looking for our reaction to see how bad something is. Right, that's the other thing they're assessing.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So like, like when your daughters were little, like they'd be running to you and then they'd fall and they'd like scrape up their knee and they look at their knee and then they look at you. And in those moments, like we're awesome. We're like, you're okay. You're okay. Right. Come here. We'll clean you up. Even if we're like, oh, that could be stitches, right? I mean, we're like, still, we hold it together because we know that if we're like, right, that they're going to have that reaction. Yeah. So there's externalization, which is sometimes how kids manage feelings, which is just basically dumping it off on the parent. There are also times where the kid keeps the feeling, comes in the house and is like, oh my gosh, this test. And they're looking at us. And if we're like, whoa, what? They're like, oh man, I thought this was like a 15-year-old size problem. This is like a 54-year-old size problem. Like this is really bad.
Right.
Whereas if we're like, okay, like what happened? You'll figure this out, right? If we can hold it together, we reassure them it's not as bad as it seems.
John, I don't mean to interrupt your concert, but I wanted to tell everybody out there, okay?
Sorry, folks. I'll
Summer
get right back to this ballad.
Is full of big moments, weddings, vacations, and endless photos.
Endless.
But if you're dealing with hair thinning or shedding, showing up and being present in those moments might feel tough.
That's right, Dave. And that's why Nutrafol takes a whole body approach to hair growth, working from inside out.
That's right.
Right? Mm-hmm. So the sooner you start, the sooner you'll feel confident and focusing on what matters most.
You may have heard of Nutrafol's hair growth supplements and wondered, do they actually work?
Let us tell you. Look, it's a fair question. Many hair supplements overpromise and underdeliver. But Dave?
Yeah.
Nutrafol is different. Okay?
Wow.
As the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand, it's trusted by over 1.5 million people and is clinically tested to deliver real results in just 3 to 6 months.
John, I have a couple more facts. I want to tell you, thinning hair is different for men and women. So a one-size-fits-all approach to hair growth doesn't cut it. Come on, man. Nutrafol has multiple formulas for men and women that are tailored to different life stages and lifestyle factors, so you can get just what you need.
That's right. Plus, users of Nutrafol Men reported no impact on sexual performance.
Now that's good news, John.
That's right. Building a hair growth routine is so easy.
Soups easy.
You order online, no prescription required, enjoy free shipping, automated deliveries, and up to 20% savings with a Nutrafol subscription. Plus, there's more.
What?
Get a free naturopathic doctor consults and a Headspace meditation membership.
That's right. Start your hair growth journey, and what a journey it will be. Oh, the places you'll go, John. With Nutrafol, for a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription.
Amazing.
And free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code DADVILLE.
Find out why over 4,500 healthcare professionals and stylists recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code DADVILLE.
That's Nutrafol.com, promo code DADVILLE. Ironically, I've talked to two friends who have girls that are in teenage years in the last day, like just randomly saw these people, and both of them just sort of made mention like, oh, it's really crazy because one day they're like this, John, we were talking about this before, like, and then the next day like this. And I think it just brought to mind again this idea of like, how do you do that if you don't know who you're going to get?
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? Like, what is the way to walk through that as a parent?
So I actually can sum up the answer in 2 words, and then I'm going to unpack it. Okay. So when our kids are full of uncomfortable emotion, the ideal response from the parent is to try to be a steady presence. Like, that's the goal. Now, I myself have 2 daughters. I have a daughter who's 21. I have a daughter who's 14. So if we're going to be honest, or to fake being a steady presence, right? Because you don't feel steady in those moments, but you want to try to look at. Okay, so then what does this actually mean? What it actually means is offering empathy. When kids are full of emotion, on the floor, upset, freaking out about something, if you just start with, I will say the words I say more than any in my house, oh my gosh, that stinks. Right? Of course you're upset.
Yeah.
To me, this is how you actually do steady presence, because you're like totally present. You're like, I am here for this emotion. I am, telling you that I think it's a lousy one and I agree and I see it. And you're doing nothing else. You're not asking questions. You're not trying to fix it. You're not picking up the phone. You're not telling her it's not as big a deal as it feels. So the steadiness is in the like, holy moly, that stinks. I promise you, this is all kids want. I would say probably 98% of the time.
Yeah.
If you're like, yeah, but what about that 2%? My follow-up line in my kitchen is there anything I can do that won't make this worse?
Oh, wow.
That is like my
That's
magic
a very specific line.
Because it's like saying like, I am 100% here for this, and I am well aware that the chances of me stepping in it and trying to be helpful are very high. It's actually even got some like humor to it, which is nice in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Kids really appreciate it. They're like, I appreciate that you are asking, and I appreciate that you're likely to mess this up. So thank you, right? Between that stinks and is there anything I can do that won't make this worse? You cover 99.9% of all moments like this.
Wow. And I think conversely, the worst thing you can do is, as John said, is sort of meet that emotion with the same amount or bravado or whatever, that just big, where it's like, oh my, but just to remain calm.
Well, and sometimes like my knee-jerk reaction, especially as my oldest is getting older and the problems are getting a little more nuanced and complicated, I want to go the other way. Like when I come to my wife and I'm stressed about, like, oh, my career's over, I want her to laugh at me. I want her to be like, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said. You're going to be have a great career for the next 50 years. That's what I personally want. So I tend to treat my kids, my natural reaction is to, I'm going to just dismiss this, and hopefully the message that they will get is like, oh, this isn't, I shouldn't worry about that. But that just doesn't work. And like you're saying, they just want empathy.
It.
Yeah.
Like when you say that, they're like, you don't understand this then.
Yeah.
And the nice thing is, and this gets back to your question, John, about like what's going on in their brains. In those moments, they are in full dysregulation. Like the emotions are like, have blinded them to everything.
Yeah.
And so those maneuvers of saying, yeah, this stinks, and is there anything I can do that won't make it worse? What you want to think about that doing is actually calming their brains down. And then what is kind of amazing is once they themselves are calm, they're like, yeah, it's probably not that big a deal. Like they can do it.
Because they're seeing you recognize the validity of the situation. You recognize the emotion, but it's not sinking you. It's not, you're handling it.
You're not freaking out about it. You're just saying, oh, that's a really, you're super upset. And I get it. I think a lot of people in your shoes would be upset.
Yeah.
I promise you, all kids want is empathy. Most of the time. And usually what they get is advice, which is actually the one thing they don't want in that moment.
Right. Well, and I have to remember like what it was like to be a teenager. Yes. There's an underlying it's in the water of like parents don't get it. That's like they wake up and they're starting from that point. Like,
no,
you know what I mean?
No, 100%. I talked about this story. I think it's in Untangled. I cared for a family. The mom was a radiologist at the Cleveland Clinic. The dad was in software. Mm-hmm. The daughter was an athlete, refused to let her mother look at her swollen ankle, would only let her father do it.
That's such a perfect example of the teenage mindset.
Well, and her rationale was like, well, he was an athlete. Mom, you weren't. Sure. I mean, like, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful, right?
Well, I feel like speaking of empathy, I have in my notes here, like the spirit of your book, there's such great just practical information in there that is so helpful. But the spirit of your book is so empathetic and honoring to our kids. It really, beyond just being helpful, it actually helps me at a time when there's a lot of tension going on in the house. It helps me empathize with my daughter. It helps me like root for her. All that kind of, it just has a great, it's very honoring of them, which I really appreciate. Mm-hmm. And it helps me realize so many aspects of their life. I feel like you do such a good job of like putting the reader in their shoes and reminding us as parents some of the challenges that we just forget. One of them being how much they are dealing with throughout any given day. Like they're at school all day long. That the cookie radish experiment.
Oh yeah,
remember this?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that experiment? I thought that was such a great that experiment shed light on such a great truth.
Yeah. So the headline of that experiment is willpower is a limited resource. We only have so much at any given time. And this is why I love being a psychologist, because like my academic colleagues like do come up with some pretty fun and funny ways to get to the bottom of things. Mm-hmm. So these researchers, and it's really diabolical, which all the best studies are. So these researchers, they really are, right? So they brought people into a lab and they gave them unsolvable puzzles, very frustrating puzzles, and asked them to work on them. Didn't tell them they were unsolvable.
Just cruel.
It really, yeah. I mean, we do this actually more than you would expect. And they had two groups, control group and a case group. So the control group, they were like, oh, here's this nice plate of chocolate chip cookies. Feel free to enjoy them while you work on this puzzle. The case group, the people they were really measuring, they had this nice plate of warm chocolate chip cookies, so it's giving off aroma, and then a plate of radishes. And they were like, oh, yeah, no, don't mind those. Those are for the other experiments happening later. But if you want some radishes, you can have some radishes. And what they found was the people who could eat the cookies worked on the puzzles much longer before they finally gave up than the people who were using some percentage of their willpower to resist the cookies only had so much willpower left over to do the radishes. Okay, or to do the puzzle. Okay, so what does this mean? School is hard. Our kids' days are incredibly long. And I actually, like one of my colleagues who I just love, Michael Thompson, said like he followed a kid through a school day one time and he was like, by third period, I was ready to poke myself in the eye with my pencil. Like, and I think we would all, like, I don't think any of us could do it, right? Yeah. I mean, they are with all these kids and all these adults and being asked to do things and their lockers getting jammed and someone's being annoying and they have to sit next to that kid.
And they don't really have any control over the day.
Yeah, they just have to like withstand all of this. So they are exercising so much willpower all day because the surface is they're being great. They're being completely compliant to adults who bug them a lot. They are working with that kid who is not helping at all. Like they are so awesome at school. And I think, one day I was giving a talk. I was like, here's the deal with kids. School gets the best of them. We get the rest of them. Right. And I think that really is true. Yeah. That, they hold it together and they've used all this willpower all day long. They walk in the door and we're like, hey, you need to go clean up your room and walk the dog. And they're like, roar, right? Because they're like, are you kidding me? Like, I have no bandwidth left to be a compliant, good little kid.
Yeah. So that actually, Dave, that reminds me of the post that you did a month or two ago. Dave did a little video online that said, what was the gist of it? It was like the home is like the testing ground.
Yeah, well, the verbiage I had was a lot more alliterative and great, but you're living in the lab.
Living
just
in the
this
lab.
idea that like,
Sorry, I still took that alliteration
kids,
away.
Man, I've worked on it. No, yeah, just kind of making the point. So one of my kids, was just being a punk and whatever. And then we went to school and they were walking around their old school and it was like Mother Teresa or Father. Yeah. It was just, how are you? And, can I help you with it? And I just was like, what is
Where
this?
is this kid?
Where? Yeah. But and then I just got on Instagram and was basically saying like, it was just a real revelation to me of like, you really are living in the lab at home. This is where they're figuring out how to be humans, and you got to have a lot of grace for that.
Yeah.
Which is not always.
Not always easy.
Yeah.
Because, and we don't talk about this enough, by the time we see our kids at the end of the day, we're very tired.
That's right. I
Definitely.
was going to say that too.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of gets lost in it, right? Like, we're just trying to get to the end of the day. We're just trying to get through dinner. Maybe there's a show we want to watch, right? And then when your kid is falling apart or being rude, I mean, it's so hard to bring your A game in that moment.
Yeah, it takes a lot of energy to be patient and all that kind of stuff. So,
quote unquote, all that kind of stuff
and all that kind of stuff.
That's our first Advil book. It's going to be a tutorial. Yeah. They will not ask us to come to Pixar.
Let's talk about pulling back of the curtain. Because this is a real source of the discomfort in having and being a teen, right? Yeah. The pulling back of the curtain that you talk about in the book. Can you speak about that and specifically like what is happening developmentally? Why is it? Because you could say that all of childhood is just one long, slow pullback of the curtain. Like kids start out thinking we are superhuman. And then it's a slow realization that we're not. But for some reason in these years, it is just escalated. Like the curtain is on fire and they have torn it down and they're looking at us in disgust. Why is that?
Okay, let me say one broad framing comment and then I want to come in on this. So you're talking about chapter 4, which is my favorite chapter in the book, called Contending with Adult Authority. And to your earlier point, John, about like this book helping you be more empathic and appreciate all that your kid is going through. The way I structure this book is, it's called Untangled, Guiding Teenage Girls Through the 7 Tasks in Transitions into Adulthood. So every chapter is one of their jobs that they are doing as teenagers, one of the transitions. So it's parting with childhood, joining a new pack, harnessing emotion, contending with adult authority, planning for the future, entering the romantic world, and caring for themselves. And the way I framed that is because there is so much they are trying to do, and there is so much they're trying to accomplish. And we are such better parents if we appreciate adolescence is not something they are doing to us. Adolescence is this complex set of tasks that they are trying to work their way through, and we get pulled in and pushed out in weird ways.
Yeah.
So chapter 4 is contending with adult authority. Like that task of figuring out, like, what do I do with these people who have power over me, who I know most of the time are basically making it up? Like, what am I supposed to do with these people, right? That's what this task is.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is it hits right around 14. So you're right. I mean, there's sort of a gradual process. But one of the things, and I adore 14-year-olds. I mean, I like them all, but there's some ages that I just think are like magic ages. 14-year-olds, girls especially, boys maybe a couple beats later, are developing, their brains are developing fast. They get the capacity for abstraction. They get the ability to see things in more nuanced ways, to ask more questions, to not take things in whole. And it shows up in family life as skepticism and questioning everything.
Oh, wow.
And it's annoying, actually.
Right. Yeah, you talked in the book about the scenario of throwing a phone out the window.
Yeah.
And asking like a 8-year-old that, why would someone throw a phone out the window, or asking like a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
And they're finally able to even think about what could cause that.
Yeah, they can spin it in all these different ways.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's actually a very exciting time developmentally, because this is also why you read To Kill a Mockingbird right around this age, because you can understand it. You don't give To Kill a Mockingbird to 6th graders, you give it to 8th graders, right? Because you're right on the brink of being able to think about the world in these new exciting ways. So what this looks like in your home is everything you do, they're like, why? I don't see it. I don't get it. And the opening of that chapter, I actually almost have it memorized, because I think you're talking about pulling back the curtain. So here's how it goes. Remember that scene in The Wizard of Oz where Toto pulls back the curtain And Dorothy suddenly sees that the great and powerful Oz is just this guy kind of frantically pulling levers behind a curtain trying to exercise his power. That's 14. So up until that point, most of the time kids are like, well, you're the adults, you know what you're talking about. And then the curtain gets pulled back and they're like, you're the adults because you have survived to this point. There's nothing really otherwise.
That is the qualification.
Right? There's nothing otherwise that means you know more. And actually, a lot of my life, I know better than you, or you didn't have when you were a teenager, because adolescence has changed pretty dramatically.
Yeah.
And so what it means is we just have to be mindful of this. And I'll tell you what this looks like in real life. It is the difference between saying to kids, don't vape. Vaping is bad. And saying, what do you know about vaping? This is new to me. We did not have this when I was a teenager. What do you know? What do you think? What should I know? What do you think you should know? That's how this plays out. Because if you just say to a kid, don't vape, you're talking to a kid who knows so much more about vaping than you will ever know, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, you don't know anything about this. Why should I take your guidance when I actually have so much more information? And I've also often thought about it like, if we say to a kid, don't vape or don't whatever, on stuff they know so much more than we do, it would be like your 13-year-old coming to you and being like, we need to talk about your mortgage. You know, you'd be like, go away.
I'd be like, how did you know? You know? Oh, shoot. You know, too.
You know, too.
I'd be like, you know nothing about mortgages. Like, why would I take your advice on mortgages?
Right.
So what we have to do is treat them respectfully, acknowledge that they know things that we don't know, acknowledge that they have perspectives that we cannot yet share, or we don't yet share. I think the other thing I would say is they start to call us on our own nonsense a lot more. And this is hard. This does not feel good. They're not always nice about it. I think you can reasonably expect for them to be respectful and make that a baseline. But I will say this presents a real moment in parenting teenagers that can go one of two ways. So there are some parents where the kid's like, you know what? You're kind of a big fat hypocrite about, you know, whatever it is. And the parent's like, I'm the adult, flex my authority, stop, right? And they just get angry. That does not usually go well. That does not strengthen your relationship with your kid. If the kid is not wrong about pointing out your shortcomings, and believe me, my daughters have pointed out many of my very true shortcomings, and you are like, yep, that would be true. It's not about you. It was in place before you were here. I will work on it, or I'm trying to work on it. And even better, if you actually can work on it, having a teenager can make you a better person, a much better person.
Right.
What I'm so this subject fascinates me. In those moments, it's almost like when is it appropriate to do either kind of like, hey, I mean, obviously you want to be vulnerable, you want to be honest, right? But can you do that to detriment? I mean, would it ever scare a kid feeling like, oh my gosh, like you never want to be, you need to be appropriate with what you tell your kids. But I would think in that season where they can really hold these abstractions and really understand like, oh, people can really be great and still have these flaws. And I'm really seeing that my parents are like this and whatever. I just think I can sense it'll be tricky moving into those seasons of like, okay, you kind of nailed it, but I also need to be mindful about how I communicate the truth about that. So even your 14-year-old brain is not going to be like, what? And you're like, yeah, it's all a lie. Or, that relationship that looks great, it's awful.
You want them to still feel that
like some
stability.
sense of security and that you still are an authority, but at the same time welcoming into a relationship where it's like, yeah, you're right, that's not something I do well, or I'm working on that or whatever. In other words, like, they say something and then all of a sudden you're in tears and you're like, I've been holding this for years and you don't understand. You have to balance the budget. You do. And like, so what are those, where's the propriety for that?
You're right. I mean, kids want a grown up in the room. Like that's what you're asking. Like, and they deserve to have a grown up in the room. And side by side with being a grown up in the room, they know we're human. They know we are flawed, and we're better off owning it than trying to minimize it.
Yeah.
So say, for example, say your kid's like, you're so weird about money, right? You're so weird about money. Like you get like super flipped out about like a small expense and then you don't make a big deal of a big expense. Like, they will start to make those observations, and my experience of kids is they tend to be pretty spot on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think in those moments you can say, yeah, I don't think you're wrong about this, right?
Yeah.
It's not my strong suit. And then this is the beauty of older kids is you can say, you've met grandma and grandpa. Like, I didn't get the best coaching from them on how to handle money. And I'm trying to be better. But like, this isn't about me trying to be weird with you. This is something I carry within me and I'm trying to sort out. And then you can say, but this is what's really great. Your mom's great with money.
Yeah.
And so between us, your bases are covered.
Yeah. Okay.
So you can sort of do like there is a grown-up in the room, both one who is willing to acknowledge their shortcomings without, being collapsing in the face of them. And I want to come back to that. And also like, but your needs are met, kiddo, and that's never going to stop. Like that's always going to be true. But on the thing I said about like acknowledging shortcomings, but not being crushed by it, one of the things, and I wrote about this in my middle book, Under Pressure, about stress and anxiety, girls can be really prone to perfectionism. Girls can be incredibly hard on themselves.
Wow.
And I will tell you, the number one check against perfectionism is for the adults who love them to model what I just said. Like, yep, that is a shortcoming of mine.
Wow.
And yet, I am still a good person, a decent parent, right? Like, I can, walk in the community and feel proud of myself, though I do have some limitations and imperfections.
Yeah.
They actually need to see us do that if they are not going to adopt the idea that like one must be perfect or otherwise one is terrible.
Well, and it's something that I would suspect in that season that would be really hard for parents is when you are starting to, again, the curtain is changing. They're seeing you not, I think you call it wizard. You're not quite as, they're seeing the demotion of a wizard, slowly, like the hat's a little smaller, the beard's a little shorter. You're starting to sort of turn into more of a human. I would imagine there's a great pull to suddenly be like, oh, now we can like bro up. Because like I can finally like I'm here to like you can over contemporary that relationship or over peer that relationship where that's where you see God bless them all, but like the parents who throw the parties, and you're kind of like don't love that
Party
move.
parents.
Party parents. So I think, and I saw you speak to this in one of your interviews about this idea that you're never, I want to get the quote right, but you won't always get along with your kids. And so I would imagine that season there's going to start to be this friction of like, wow, we're having like more adult conversations. This is really exciting because I can sort of let them in on, hey, this is, and they go, wow, that actually helps me understand it. And you feel this real like, oh my gosh, like we're kind of chumming it. Like it's starting to happen. But at the same time, needing structure, as you said, that's one of my favorite things you've said so far. You still need a parent in the room. And so as a parent, and at the same time with all that, you're seeing that you're being demystified.
Yeah.
And so there's all these, even as a parent, and this is what I think is so beautiful about one of your sort of things you really preach is this idea that like we're doing our own work too. It's not just a kid that's changing. You're having to change so much of your posture, month to month, week to week, year to year with this kid because, you are a little less of an authority or an expert, but you're also still the parent but you're now a little more of a friend sort of in some ways, but you're also dad and so I think, I think that I can't imagine how much of a rub that is for the parent. And so I think this being Dadville, I just would say we have to have a lot of grace for ourselves, know what we're changing to.
100%.
And I think there's work we need to be doing and keeping real-time tickers on our emotions and expectations and all those things too,
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing I will say though. Enjoy teenagers. They are so fun. And part of what is so fun is you can play with them more in a new way, right? Like that they can be like kind of inappropriate at home in ways that are like so fun and funny. I mean, I have so much fun sending memes back and forth with my 21-year-old that are like, these are not appropriate. Like they're just not, right? And like, we have such a blast.
Rarely are,
Yeah, exactly. And also, you are the adult, right? Like you can actually, it's not one or the other. Right. It's not one or the other, and so, she's going to be a senior in college, and we're having like really, big conversations about what her plans are after college. Like I'm not driving them, but she's like wanting to talk about it. So we're like deep into very, like parenting full on and talking. And also, like goofy, inappropriate, funny, like playful, like that's like my favorite part about adolescence. I'll give you another, like why I love 14 so much, like, cause they're actually straddling, they're both kind of little kids and they're also super, sophisticated in their thinking. A few years ago, I used to consult to a school in my community, and I was there like a day and a half a week, and I was about to teach the 9th grade girls about depression. Like that was the task of the day. And I invited one of my clinical colleagues over, a psychiatrist, to, just be there to answer the medical questions. And she adores teenagers like I do, and we're waiting for class to start. And what are the 9th grade girls doing? They are playing a game when they're seeing how many goldfish they can stuff in their mouth, goldfish crackers. Simultaneously.
Not real
like
goldfish.
Not real goldfish. Like who can put the most goldfish crackers in their mouth at one time? Like that is the game. And my colleague and I are watching this, and we are just cracking up because we know in 5 minutes, these same kids are going to be asking the most incisive questions about the nature of psychiatric diagnosis and the necessity of medication and why. And like, and the biological underpinnings of mood disorders, like, that's like for me like the pure joy of teenagers.
Wow, I love that.
They've got
That's
both,
really well said.
a foot on both sides.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about conflict and why it's good and why it's necessary for our teens to have conflict, specifically with us. Before I do though, I wrote down here one of the most immediately helpful things from your book was, as you mentioned earlier, as the curtain's being pulled back. And our daughter is seeing all of our rules and regulations that we've put in place. The arbitrariness of some of them is that curtain was pulled back in real time for me as well. It's like they're seeing all the things that we say that they're like, why? The example that you put in the book was your daughter went to write something on her hand. And you were, as I would have in the moment, you're just like, what do you do? Go get some paper. Like I would, in that moment, I'd be like, this is a chance for me. Like I would be thinking, this generation, they are so lazy. We had to go get a Post-it note, like go get some paper and write it down on paper. But you were like, that's an arbitrary rule. What's the reason for not writing it on your hand? Like there are plenty of good reasons to write it on your hand.
Yeah.
And that was so helpful for me. Literally that night, I was at the grocery store with my daughters, and there was a situation where my daughter, Luca, our 12-year-old, was like, but she disagreed with something I said. Had I not read your book that day, I would have just stuck to my guns. I would have been like, again, this is where I need to be strong.
Yeah.
Dig in my heels. Let's get through this teenage year. And I was like, you're totally right.
Yep.
And so we switched it up. So anyway, I just wanted to say like that realization that we're all having of the arbitrariness of the rules that we make is such, it's so fascinating. I didn't realize it before. I didn't realize how many of these things that come out of my mouth don't really have a good reason behind them,
And we get away with it for years.
Yeah.
Right? So there's no reason to question it. Here's what I will say though. One is, we will make rules for kids, and I think those rules, and you'll make rules for your kids. They should be about safety, and they should be about the decent treatment of other people. Like we should always be able to offer a rationale because they're going to start to require it. The other thing I will say is not throwing down around arbitrary rules gives more weight when you're like, okay, that is a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Right? If you're like, here is why you are not to touch, this substance or whatever. And then you also, because they're teenagers and they deserve this, because this is how it compromises your safety, right? Because they deserve explanations that make sense to them. And so that is also why, interestingly, like enjoying teenagers is something that we should totally do. It also is it's our disciplinary strategy. When you're having fun with your kid, when you can have fun, if you suddenly are like, hey, cut it out, that means something because they're like, oh, shoot, we were having a good time and I just did something that ended the good time. If I knock it off, I get back to the good time. And so, I think so often I get questions about disciplining teenagers. I'm like, discipline 101 with teenagers is to be reasonable and fun to be with when they are being reasonable and fun to be with.
Yeah.
Wow. Jeez,
You said at one point in the book with a different example, like now that teen, if they step out of line or they make a bad decision, it comes at the expense of this great relationship that they now have with their parents. They've got something to lose.
They've got something to lose. And it's interesting, and I talk about this in the book. Clinically, this can look very counterintuitive because sometimes you'll get kids in who are just like, totally at odds with their parents. And there's just like, they're in trouble all the time and they're being super naughty. And the parents are just like putting the screws to them and, more and more punishment. And my experience is actually the kid has nothing to lose at this point by being, as naughty as they want to be. Right. It's about actually trying to rebuild something that is, worth protecting.
Yeah.
That's actually going to help that kid make better choices.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So when it comes to conflict, of which we are having plenty of, during this time, can you talk a little bit about why it's not just conflict for conflict's sake? Like, well, you say that with our teen and our teen girls especially, like, do we need to have conflict with them? Yes. Do they need to have conflict with us specifically? Yes. And what are the reasons for those?
So you are diving into my favorite section of that favorite chapter of the book. It's a section called Rupture and Repair. And what I'll tell you, I have very vivid memories of writing that section. It is grounded in very theoretical work that is in our field that is excellent, but almost in another language. It's so academic. And I remember where I was when I was working on that chapter, and I remember feeling like, I have this like visual of feeling like I was dragging the theoretical content across to, a broad audience without trying to lose any of its accuracy, like trying to bring it across really, really accurately. And that's like that's the best part of my job. Like that's like I don't have any skill that's unique to me except like that's the thing I do that's different, right? Like, or that it feels like mine. Like, I'm not inventing theory. I'm not sharing. I'm not coming up with new ideas. Everything in that book are things I've been taught. But like, my job is to try to translate them so that a smart, broad audience gets exactly what we know in a way that makes sense. So the theory there is that we're trying to build emotional intelligence in our kids. And you build emotional intelligence not when you're having a good time, but actually when you're at odds with one another. And I quote someone in the book, and their description of emotional intelligence is being able to see oneself from the outside and other people from the inside.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a brilliant quote. Yeah. Not mine. And so when we are in conflict, suddenly you can start to work those muscles. So say your kid comes home and you're like, you need to take out the trash, blah, 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 blah. And your kid's like, blah, terrible day, blah, 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 right? Goes up to their room, slams the door. It's ugly. If you can take a beat and then go to them and say, hey, I owe you an apology. You had just walked in the door. You hadn't even put down your bag. I didn't even ask you how your day was. I'm sure it felt like I leapt down your throat about the garbage, and I'm sorry. Also, explanation, not an excuse. Today was incredibly long. I was really frustrated by a whole bunch of things that had nothing to do with you. I walked in the door, I saw the garbage, and I didn't handle it well. So you are actually modeling, I am trying to imagine what it felt like from your perspective, and I actually want to give you a little insight into what's happening from my perspective. Now, this doesn't mean that suddenly like there will be no more conflict and it's all, roses and candy. But what it does mean is that you're building that capacity to think about what is going on with Dad that he's doing this, or what was going on with me that I did something that was so out of character. What does this get us? Like, this gets us insight. And what does insight get us? It gets us choice, right? The whole point of being able to examine oneself and question one's motivations is that then you have options. If you just plow into the world like, I don't know why I do what I do, but I do it, you're just going to keep doing things even if they're not good for you.
And I think you said at some point in the book about emotions specifically with our teen girls, they're never more sensitive to emotions during these years. Is that right? Or am I botching that?
No, you're not botching it. There is a real heightening around 13 or 14 where kids are super dysregulated. And I think this is, the timing's not great because, as you mentioned, first of all, adolescence hits way sooner than anybody expects.
Yeah.
And I think people should be reading my book by 9 or 10 because that's where it's going to start.
Wow.
And then they are so dysregulated right around 13, 14. So right when people are like, okay, now we have a teenager. And then they're like, holy moly, like this is how we come out of the gate? Like with feelings this big, this powerful? Where is it headed? Okay, good news. It's actually headed down. 14, 15, 16, 17, much better regulated than that 13, 14 juncture. But it's just really spicy for a while.
Spicy is an amazing descriptor. It's just
so
spicy.
Well, and it's just, I have to restrain myself from just talking about mine and Amy's, my wife's, current situation this whole hour. But it's like, it is spicy, and then it is, I don't know what the other side, it's sweet. Like it is so back and forth. You have no idea who is waking up any given morning. You know what I mean? Who's coming down the stairs? You don't know. Will they speak to me? Will they look at me? I don't know.
Or will they hug me? Will they come over? Yeah, no, it's unbelievable. And John, I will tell you, parent to parent, not even psychologist to colleague, like I will tell you, the hardest thing I have found in raising teenagers and the best thing is not holding a grudge.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because they were a jerk to you 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And you're like, what was that? And then they come back in the kitchen and they're like, oh my God, will you braid my hair? And you can't be like, no, I'm still mad about what happened.
Right.
Because then you're going to miss out on this really nice moment, which isn't to say let your kids abuse you.
Yeah.
But the more you can kind of goldfish your way through this, where you're just like, all right, they are in a new place. They don't even remember that interaction. Like, this doesn't have to be the moment I, flex all of my authority. I think the better.
Yeah.
Man, that's good.
Okay, listen, I mentioned that I had anxiety about 50 minutes ago about all that we're not going to get to. I'm looking at all the stuff that we didn't have time to talk about. And so I'm not going to put you on the spot, but we would love to have you back.
I would love to come back.
Because there's so much
and
more.
we'll record it this time, by the way. I should add that.
We'll put it out next time.
But this is a great trial run. We do appreciate it.
But since we are Dad Bill, you're a Dad Bill, and we have a lot of dads listening, what is I'll just speak for myself. There's so many, it can get so complicated, and your book is so helpful. But there are just so many things to think about and great truths to be reminded of. But I can only keep a couple words in my brain, my tiny little brain, as I do my best to be a good dad. Is there like a mantra that you can give the dads listening who are trying to be great dads to their teen girls? What can they hold on to?
Honestly, it's not personal. It's not personal. Whatever she just did that got under your skin, even if she's trying to make it personal, don't make it personal.
No matter how personal what she just said is.
Yeah. No, if she says,
personal, guys.
Are you seriously going to... Wait, what'd you say?
It gets personal.
It gets personal, right?
Yeah.
If she's like, did you seriously wear those pants out of the house today? Like if she says something like that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That hurts. What is happening for her is I am 13, 14. I am trying to figure out my brand. You guys, because I'm so young, are caught up in my brand. And so how you look when you leave the house reflects on me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And I'm super anxious because I am a 7th or 8th grader and this is not going well. And I need to get you in line so that you don't make my brand look so bad. That's what it means to her.
Yeah.
So if you're like, oh yeah, I wore them. Hope my fly was up. You know what I mean? Like, just see them and raise them. Like, have fun with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have fun with them.
Yeah, that's great. That is, gosh. I mean, I think the trick of I'm like with our 10-year-old, and she's, we're just starting to get a little bit into like, oh, there's like tiny bits of spice, just like sprinklings of spice. But I'm like, that is going to be not reacting, as you've said so well, is just going to be really, really tough, to take a beat and sort of like, this is not an attack.
It's not an attack. It's not personal. I will also say, in heterosexual marriages, dads have a very, very important role to fill around teenage daughters. Because one thing we see in the research, and I also saw in my house, girls are more reactive to their moms most of the time. Mm-hmm. So I also can say that I could characterize both of my daughter's 13th years. I could headline them as the years where I kept saying to my husband, you need to go tell her that we are leaving the house in 10 minutes. You need to go tell her that she left.
Dad is the emissary.
That is definitely true in our house. Our daughters are just harder on my wife.
Yeah. And so that dad who could be like, I got it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I will keep the temperature down. It's just too combustible
sort of
sometimes.
Like goes in with the armor, just sort of like turn and just run. Yeah.
So dads are really important.
And that's great. I've been speaking a lot lately on the podcast about these teenage years, and I do want to say, I mean, there are such moments of like extreme sweetness, and especially lately. We went through a season there where it was just spice all day, every day. And now we're in this sort of like roller coaster. And in a way, sort of like that elongated spice really it broke us down in a great way. And now we are like, we see the wins. You know what I mean?
She smiled. Oh my gosh.
Exactly. And it's stripped me of sort of like the game plan that I had. All that's gone, and I have like come. I thank the Lord I found your book, Amy and I, when we did, and we're really like open-handed in a great way. I think the way that we're walking through all of this, but we're just so grateful that you gave us some of your time.
I just want you to be prepared that in 2 years, when my daughter is in it, I'm going to ask you, we're going to have you back on. I'm going to ask all of these same questions just over again.
No, hopefully it will be before 2 years, but
yeah,
because we've got whenever you're ready for
me. Lisa, we didn't even talk about social media and phones
so much.
Okay, real quick. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, let's do it.
For the hypothetical, parents who, let's say, when their daughter was in like 3rd or 4th grade, they were like, she's not getting a phone until high school, maybe late high school. And we are sticking to our guns on that. And then let's say hypothetically, they find that their daughter is
all
like
hypothetical, all
asking
12,
for a friend.
12 and a half.
Yeah.
And let's just say this hypothetical girl has hypothetical friends who most of them have hypothetical phones. And they're finding themselves hypothetically changing their story. Like,
of course they are.
Like, are they just? Do they need to stick to their guns, or are they finding themselves with legitimate reasons to pivot?
There are plenty of reasons to give a kid a phone. I will just say that. And the thing that one can do that makes a huge difference is to uncouple giving a kid a phone and giving them social media. Those are two different things.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in the discourse, they get run together.
That's great. That's great.
The other thing I will say is you can make a lot of rules on the front end, like don't take this in your bedroom. That is a very good rule. And when a kid is asking for a phone, they will agree to that. And it makes it easy to maintain that over time. So there's some things that you can do that make a very big difference. What I will say, I'll just tell you exactly what we did as a family. Our girls started with old iPhones that we took to the store, and we had them set up with no browser, no social media apps, and no capacity to add apps without our permission.
Oh, wow.
And I said, this is your texting machine. This is your listening to music machine, right? You guys are musicians. The number one things that kids do to help themselves feel better when upset is they listen to their playlists. Yeah. Right? It's wildly effective and adaptive and healthy. And then you text with your friends. We'll see how that goes. When the day comes that you cannot stay connected to your peers without social media, we will have that conversation. I'm hoping you are 14, 15, 16, for the reasons I mentioned. You need a lot of skepticism if you're going to be on social media. You need to be critical.
Wow.
Yeah.
We'll get there when we get there. Social media has risks for kids. Social isolation is definitely bad for kids. We know that.
Yeah.
I will also say, to the question of could you give a kid a phone earlier? So my girls are 7 years apart. they have a very strong relationship. And when my older daughter went to college, her sister needed a channel to communicate with her that did not include us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was no other option but of course, for her overall health and well-being, having access to texting was it obvious. So I think it goes back to something we talked about earlier about rules that make sense to kids.
Yeah.
Right? Arbitrary rules do not make sense to kids because they actually don't make sense. Whereas saying, it's not going in your room because it'll disrupt your sleep. And if there's anything that's going to mess with your mental health, it's disrupting your sleep. And I'm going to check it every once in a while because you're new to this, and I need to know that you use it the way you're supposed to use it, which is basically, nothing you wouldn't want your grandma to see. And then once I see that you're handling it well, I will give you more latitude. And the reason I'm going to hold off on social media is that there's definitely toxic garbage there, and I need you to be very skeptical and very, almost like borderline cynical before you get there, so that when you are exposed to this stuff, you and I can talk about it, you don't take it in whole.
Yeah.
There's no one size fits all. You know the kid you've got. And what I would say about social media, this isn't perfect, but it's pretty close. Social media is like a high school party, right? Kids want to be there, their friends are there, and stuff can go wrong. Okay, who gets to go to high school parties? Okay, you could send a 14-year-old to a high school party if you're like, okay, that 14-year-old has their head really on straight, and if anything is going to go wrong, they're going to tell us.
Yeah.
That kid could go to a high school party. There are 17-year-olds, you're like, oh no, you are not going to a party, right? You are the kid who's going to find the darkest basement, and if things go sideways, you're the last thing you're going to do is call an adult. You know your kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here's actually I think this is a great place for us to land, which is, everything good that happens in raising adolescents happens in the context of your relationship with them. Wow. It is all about the relationship. And the safety of a teenager, for me, can be measured by whether they trust the adults in their environment and can go to them if something goes wrong. And you can set social media up and digital technology in a way like, dude, I'm on your side. I'm on your side. There are harms that we want to minimize. And that's what we're trying to do. Or you can do the opposite of like, kid, it's me versus you and social media and that damn phone, right? Like, that doesn't really work.
Yeah.
That's great. That's so helpful.
Doc, just killing the game.
Listen, everybody go to drlisamoore.com and buy all her books, buy tons of copies of the books, give them to your friends, even if they don't have kids. Give them to their friends. One thing that I do want to mention on your site, you can go and type in any question, and it will bring up anything that you have written or put in your podcast about that specific question. Yeah. I mean, how helpful is that? There's such a great resource.
It's so fun. So it's my AI-powered librarian. My daughter named her Rosalie. My daughter was 13. She's like, you should name her Rosalie. So we did. And what we did is we took all the manuscripts from my books, all the transcripts from my 200 plus podcasts, all the pieces I wrote for the New York Times, almost 100. Louise. I have a weekly newsletter that is free. I put so much work into it. We put all the newsletters in it. And so then Rosalie, if you ask her a question, she will say, here's what Lisa says. And then she'll send you, here's the podcast, here's the article.
Oh my gosh, that's good.
So she'll give you 90 to 100 words just to get you going. And then if you want to keep going, she'll tell you where to go.
That's incredible.
That's so great.
Anything else people need to know about? Anything coming up that's fun and or, et cetera?
My co-host Rena and I put so much work into our podcast. We answer parent questions every week. We have playlists on YouTube. So if you go to our YouTube page and you want to be like raising daughters, there's a whole playlist. If you want to do, drugs and alcohol, there's a whole playlist, romance and sex. So whatever is on your mind at any given time, you can go get very specific content on that. But I'm so lucky to get to do what I do, and to have so many different ways to try to help families.
Well, you do help immensely.
You do. You're doing it so well. And we're so grateful. Thank you for all the work that you do. And thank you for coming on the pod.
Thank you.
You bet.
Are you hungry for guidance about mindset, relationships, health, finances, career decisions, and dealing with your past? I'm Trey Tucker, licensed therapist and speaker, and host of Rugged, a podcast where I help young men and women navigate life's challenges and find solutions to help them live lives of service and meaning. In this podcast, you'll learn mindset strategies to harness your thoughts and emotions in ways that help you achieve your goals. I bring a blend of straight talk and empathy, and I'm open to addressing any topic and treating it and the people connected to it with respect and curiosity. Come join us. We have a space for you. Search for Rugged with Trey Tucker wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure to hit the follow button so new weekly episodes will be delivered straight to your personal podcast feed. My hope is that this podcast will leave you feeling encouraged and empowered to take charge of your life and close the gap between who you are and who you want to be.
Hi, dear one. I'm Dr. Edie Wadsworth, your new favorite Christian life coach, and I want to invite you to the House of Joy podcast. If you're a woman over 40 or the daughter of one who wants to build a positive mindset, healthier habits, and thriving relationships, this is the show for you. We talk about personal growth, faith, resilience, and creating a life you're obsessed with. So if you're tired of feeling stuck and ready to step into more joy and purpose, come join us. Listen now wherever you get your podcast.